Hi, everyone. Let's take a look at a genetics problem. The problem I want to look at today is question number 7 from the 2018 AP Biology exam. I really like this question as an example because it describes a genetic system for sex determination that's different than what you're used to. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here and show you that question. Okay, so here's question 7. In the tongue-sole fish, sex is determined by a combination of genetics and environmental temperature. Genetically male fish have 2 Z chromosomes, ZZ, and a genetically female fish have 1 Z chromosome and 1 W chromosome, ZW. Let's stop right there for a second and look at that sentence. So if you are homozygous for the sex chromosomes in this fish, ZZ, you're male. That's different than what happens in humans or Drosophila. For example, in Drosophila, if you have 2 X chromosomes, you're female. And if you're X and a Y, you're male. X and a Y, you're male. So, and the genetically female fish are the ones that have 2 different chromosomes. And that, remember, that's called hemizygous, because hemi means half. So when fish are raised at 22 degrees Celsius, ZZ fish develop into phenotypic males, and ZY fish develop into phenotypic females. However, when fish are raised at 28 degrees Celsius, the Z chromosome is modified, denoted as Z0. Z0 W individuals develop as phenotypic males that are fertile and can pass on the Z0 chromosome to their offspring even when the offspring are raised at 22 degrees Celsius. A cross between a ZW female and a Z0 Z male is shown in the Punnett square below. So you've got the ZW female, the Z0 Z male, and you've got the 4 possible outcomes here. A, predict the percent of phenotypic males among the F1 offspring of the cross shown in the Punnett square if the offspring are raised at 22 degrees Celsius. Let's take a look at this. So let's start at the bottom here. ZZ, that's male. Why? Because in our question, it tells us in the stem of the question, ZZ is male. ZW, that's female, because they tell us that in the question. Z0 Z, 2 copies of the Z chromosome, that's also male. Z0 W, that is also male. Why? Because they tell us that in the problem, in the stem of the question. So this would be a male offspring, this would be a male offspring, this would be a male offspring, and that would be a female offspring. So what is the percent of phenotypic males among the F offspring? Well, it would be 3 out of 4 males, which works out to be 75%. And that was worth one of the 3 points on this question. Now, part B is a little trickier, I think. At least 1 Z or Z0 chromosome is necessary for the survival of fish. A researcher crossed 2 fish and observed a 2-to-1 ratio of males to females among the offspring. Now let's stop there for a second. You may remember from our genetics unit that if you get a 2-to-1 ratio of anything when you're doing these crosses, especially when you're talking about just a single gene you're looking at or a single chromosome like we are here, when you're doing a cross with just a single chromosome, the highest number of outcomes you could get would be 4, right? 1 for each square, 2 by 2, 4. But here you're seeing a 2-to-1 ratio. And when there's 4 possible outcomes, but you see a 2-to-1 ratio, does anybody remember what that means you should think might have happened? If you said that one of the possible outcomes was lethal, you are correct. So one of the possible outcomes was lethal. Now, which outcome would be lethal? Well, they're giving you a hint in the question because they said at least 1 Z or Z0 chromosome is necessary for the survival of fish. That would be analogous to saying that 1 X chromosome, at least 1 X chromosome is necessary for the survival of Drosophila. If you're XX, you're a female fruit fly. If you're XY, you're males. If you're YY, that's fatal. You need an X chromosome to survive in Drosophila. You need a Z or Z0 chromosome to survive in this particular fish. So based on the information, identify the genotype of the male parent in the cross. Now, since we know one of the offspring does not survive, and we know that WW would be fatal, that means that the male parent must have a W chromosome. Now let's go back to the stem of the question. What's the only way to get a male who has a W chromosome? If he also has the Z0 chromosome. So let's take a look at how this would look. Let's see if I can share my ImageMate screen with you. Okay, I hope everybody can see that okay. Okay, so we know WW is fatal, okay? And the only way you could get a WW individual, let me just draw the Punnett square. The only way you could get a WW individuals would be that if each parent had at least one copy of the W chromosome. Now we know females are ZW, so let's make that the female parent. So if this is the female parent, this has to be the male parent, and the only way you can have a male who has a W chromosome is if he has the Z0 chromosome, okay? So let's just go ahead and fill in the rest of this Punnett square. This offspring would be Z0. This offspring would be ZW. This offspring would be Z0W. And then, of course, we have the WW, and that would be fatal, okay? This offspring, Z0W, would that be male or female? That would be male. This offspring, Z0, that offspring would also be male. And this offspring on this side, W, that would be female. So if you look at this Punnett square, there are 2 males, 1 female. So our answer here would be that the male parent had to be Z0W. All right, so let's go back to the last part of the question. We're not quite done yet, okay? The last part of the question says, describe one fitness cost to the female of mating with this particular male. Well, remember, Darwin defined fitness as how many genes you pass on to the next generation. Basically, he or she who leaves the most offspring to the next generation wins. So if a female mates with this male, every time they mate and produce an offspring, there's a 25% chance that offspring's not going to survive. So that's going to be a fitness cost to the female. So let's take a look at the scoring guide for this question. A was pretty straightforward. Once you understood that Z0W was male, you would know there'd be 3 males, 1 female, and the percent of phenotypic males would be 75%. Okay. By working backwards from the assumption that one of the offspring was WW, and that's why you had a 2:1 ratio, we figured out from our Punnett square that the male had to be Z0W. And for the fitness cost, you could have said any of these 3 things. Fewer offspring would develop or survive. A quarter of the offspring are predicted to die. You could also make an argument that having offspring with the Z0 chromosome could be a disadvantage. Anyway, I hope that was useful and makes sense. And I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.